Alright, where we left off on the first video was after we created this new point class. So it's an empty class, it doesn't really do anything, but it's still a new data type, which means we can still declare, explain that. A class is a data type. It's a user-defined data type. In other words, the user here being the user of the Java programming language, meaning loosely like programmer in this case. But you, as the user of Java, a programmer, have created a class called point. It has no guts to it, so it doesn't do anything. It's not strictly true. Remember this for a test question. I'll repeat this later, but it does have one thing called the default empty invisible constructor. So it has something called a constructor, which we haven't learned about yet. And it's invisible, you can't see it, but it's there. And I'll show you what that means. For you, what this means is that you can declare, you can create objects of type point. So whenever you take a class and create a variable from it, well, it's not really a variable, but when you create something from it, it's called instantiating into an object or an instance of the class. So what we've got so far means two things. It means we can declare variables of type point, and it also means that we can create new objects that are point objects. That's two different things that I've just shown you there. But most of the time, not 100% of the time, but most of the time, when I say most, very commonly, these two steps are combined into one. So what I've done here is I've created a new object of type point, and I've assigned that object's memory address to the variable called p, which is a point data type variable. All these things go together. So just to talk about a couple things here. Whenever you instantiate an object of a certain class, you'll always have these things for the most part. You'll have the new keyword, you'll have the name of the class, which is point, and you'll have parentheses. It's because this is something called technically the constructor. Again, you haven't learned about it yet. But these parentheses may or may not be empty. For now, they're empty because the only constructor we have is the default parameterless invisible constructor. So what can we do with this point? Not much. Pretty much what you've just seen right here. You'll notice this will compile, but it doesn't really do anything. If we want to give a little bit of functionality, let's return to that idea. Do I still have it here? I don't. But that point structure in C that I showed you, let's kind of make a version of that for Java. So the way you would do that is you would declare, remember it was two integers, int x and int y. We're going to create them here. For now, use the public keyword. Honestly, this is not how you would do it if you were making a real class that you would really use according to the best practices of Java, but it's perfectly legal syntactical code. So what this does is it creates two things. Let me use a comment to name them here. You've taken two integers, bundled them together into something called a point. These two integers right here are called fields, or another name, I use this one more often actually, instance variables. There's probably a few other names that I'm not thinking of right now, but those are two common names for them. And the way you want to think about this is that everything that a point is as a thing, as a concept in your code for this particular code, boils down to it being an x and a y coordinate, conceptually. You shouldn't have anything else but these two fields for now. There's a couple maybe other arguments you can make, but let's say the distance between 2 points, right? That's something you could calculate, or sort of. It depends on what you mean, but you wouldn't have that included in the fields, or C. There's all kinds of things you could have here that you won't, because what does it mean to be a point? It means to be an x and a y coordinate if you're talking about a 2D grid. So how would you use this now? Now that you've created these two instance variables, you can start doing things with them. For instance, you can assign any integer to them. Let's make it coordinate 4.4 comma 5. Alright, so I can print this out now. System.out.println. Let's do literal parenthesis. Concatenate that with the first coordinate. Concatenate that with a comma. That'll be a comma. And concatenate that with the y coordinate, so that when printed out, then it'll look like a coordinate plus. Of course, we've got to have the closing parenthesis, so I'll left that out. Plus the closing parenthesis. Kind of confusing. Might have been better to actually have used placeholders for this particular example, but this will work. Alright, so when we run this code, that's what it looks like. Why is this important? Why we do things this way? Because now whenever we refer to this point P, we call it P. It's the variable that holds the address of a point. P is the name of that variable. It's a way of getting at that object. But whenever we refer to P here, we're referring to a point. They're tied together. They're inside one thing. You can create as many points as you want. So let's say point, another point. Any legal variable name will work here, and you just have to remember to do the instance of object instance creation syntax like that. It's a new point. No arguments. And it works just like the other point, except it's a different point. So why is that useful? Because on this point might be, somewhere else, like on a part of a triangle or something, one of the points, vertices of your triangle. So let's say it's 7. 2 separate points now. We'll continue this in the next video, add more to it.